our panel. I'm going to introduce them and they'll come up and take their seats. We'll start to have a conversation and then I'm going to come around the room. And we want to hear from you as well. Get your thoughts, get your questions, get your perspectives. And so let me welcome the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll go through all of them, then we'll give them all a big round of applause. Patricia Okelo, please come up. Patricia is the entrepreneur founder of Circles for Women in Business and co-founder of Kayana Create. They had to clap. They wouldn't, which is good. So we'll do it that way. Yes, come and have a seat. That's great. Let me welcome Brenda Mbathi to come up. Brenda is the CEO of Two Rivers International Finance and Innovation Center, SEZ. A warm welcome. Thank you, Brenda. Also with us, we're happy to have Kuria Mushiri, who is the board chairman of Britam. He also does a lot of things, including he's the chairman of Sauti Sol. So just gives you the breadth of what he does. A warm welcome, Kuria. And then a woman who I think is just a champion for education in Africa. If you don't know her, you need to Google her, please. Her name is Martha Muhwezi. Martha, please do come up. She's the executive director of the Forum for African Women Educationists. And they do amazing things to get girls into school. Right. And then a queen, a real queen. I met this young lady last year and she just struck me as everything that is powerful and resilient and that you cannot hold down no matter how much you try. She'll tell you her story in a moment. Let's give a big round of applause to Pauline Akinyi, founder of Rebirth of a Queen. Thank you all for being here. We value your experience and your knowledge, and we're looking forward to hearing from all of you. To kick us off, and really my first question is really delving into what you've seen and what you've experienced with respect to gender equity in your spaces, in your world. And what do we really need to do to move forward? Have we moved forward? Are we marching on the spot? In some places, are we moving backwards? We want to hear from you now. First and foremost, Pauline, please introduce yourself to everybody. In quite a short version, take us through your story and then tell us what have you experienced in terms of gender equity and what do we need to fix? Thank you.
My name is Akinyi. Today I will introduce myself as Akinyi. Some days I introduce myself as Pauline when I really want to be an adult. But recently I realized I'm a Gen Z. So today I will introduce myself as Akinyi. And I am in my thriving phase. So I no longer call myself a survivor of sexual violence and domestic violence. I went through sexual violence and domestic violence at the age of 16 and 19. I am the founder of Rebirth of a Queen organization. And Rebirth of a Queen is a baby that we are growing to empower survivors to be their voices. But just like Julie has said, if ever the world will ever need a definition of a resilience person, then I am. I bounce back every day. I bounce back. One of the things that describes me is a phoenix. I take myself through fire. I allow the fire burn me into ashes, and then I rise from them. And that is why we have Rebirth of a Queen. And maybe 1 year from now, we will meet in a different space, but we keep empowering survivors to be their voices. We keep empowering young women to be their voices. We keep looking at young women into their eyes and remind them that they are beautiful. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. Do you feel inspired? Yeah? And we'll come back to more on your story and what you think we need to do more of. Martha, let me come to you now. In your space, in the work that you do, and you can walk us through what that is. Are we advancing? Are we marching on the spot? Are we moving back? You've just heard the experience of Akinyi, who's sitting next to you. I know you've seen these things at community level as well. Where are we? What are you experiencing?
Thank you, Julie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Martha, and I work for FAWE. And FAWE is the Forum for African Women Educationalists. We are a Pan-African organization, and we work in 33 countries across the African continent. And all that we do is akinyi. We build the confidence of the girls. The best investment that you can give to a girl or to a woman is education. And therefore, we have promoted education for girls. We have worked towards bridging the gender gap in education and ensuring that there is equity and equality in and through education. When I was listening to Akinyi, I have cried and I no longer cry because we have seen it all. She is one of the many. There are many girls that because people will ask you, FAWE has been in existence for 30 years. Why haven't you resolved the problem? It's because the problem is as big as Africa can be. The solutions may not match the problem. As you address one issue, another one comes up. It's true, Julie, like you say, or like you ask, investment is being made. But at times, it's like a drop in the ocean because the problem needs so many approaches. There's no single solution that can address the plight of girls or women in Africa. And it all calls for collective responsibility. Send the girls to school. Keep the girls in school. Let the girl complete the education cycle. Let them transition to the world of work. That's when it becomes complete. And let them join the decision-making tables. And that's the only way we shall unturn. One said, the woman crumbled the world. The woman is the one that needs to do it and make things better. If we are more than half of the world's population, but we earn less than a third of the world's income, what does that mean? When we talk about empowerment, what does it mean? Empower me. I'll take decisions. I'll have control. I'll have resources. And that's where the power comes from. And if we're investing in the women, then that's the direction that we need to take. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So I've heard from both of you education, but we've heard from everybody resilience, strength, self-belief, pushing no matter how hard it is, pushing forward, and the need for us to help be the wind beneath others' wings, to stand together. I'm hearing common things. Kuria, I'm going to come back to you because you're the only man on the panel, so I want to come to that voice. Brenda, you've had an incredible career, private sector. You've seen a lot. And we'd love to understand from your perspective, what do you see? What are you experiencing? Are we making gains? Are we struggling? Where do you see us in terms of advancing equity for women and investing in women?
Thank you, Julie, and good evening, everyone. I'm on the panel representing corporate and private sector. And a lot of investment has been made, and a lot of strides have been made, and there is progress. By some of the things I'm going to say, you'll start to understand my age, which is also a problem, but we'll embrace it as well. When I started working, I couldn't wear trousers to go to work. It wasn't allowed. And in fact, when I got promoted and I was on a certain floor where the chairman sat, HR called you in to say, let's have this conversation. You will not. Others will be allowed, but you cannot wear trousers because at a certain level, ladies, you don't wear trousers. So today, even when I see trousers in the workplace, that is strides have been made, okay? And they may be small things, but they are things. They are milestones, because you all take it for granted. But it wasn't something we could take for granted when some of us started working. I do like when you say it's collective responsibility, because what I ask all of us to do is to say, to put the I in it. So what am I doing about it? Because it's what I did a lot to make sure we didn't wear trousers in the workplaces. No, so that we could wear trousers in the workplaces that I was in. And the issue of belief, having that belief that it's the right thing to do. So there's a very mixed landscape when it comes to gender equity. It's by law that you need to have a nursing room in any office space in this country. It's a law. Yeah, it's a law.
How many people knew that? Just a few. Just a few.
And we have fought for that under some of the organizations in the private sector. So under KEPSA Private Sector Alliance, where I'm also the vice chair. So there are things that we do and you advocate for. But then, as you say, do we do enough in the next steps in terms of awareness? And by coming to sessions like this is what you then start to understand. I also then ask ourselves to use the why and the I. It's the month of March, so we come together, so we celebrate, and we acknowledge the power of women. The issue, as we were told, of being there, present. Maybe we need to do more. And in places that I have worked, yes, I have led gender and inclusion. And it's very important, I say, to be focused, and we've had affinity groups that have looked at the welfare of women and women's network. But guess what? It is not easy, because all these affinity groups, and indeed to have a session like we have today, demands resources, demands focus from everybody. And in the same way as we put resources in corporate budgets for CSR or CSI or ESG, do we put in those resources for gender parity, for women? Those sort of things matter. And when we put that focus, you will start to see the results. But it's not anybody else's fault. Put the I in front of it.
Wow, wow. It's up to us. Amazing. Patricia, let's look at your journey. And you work with a lot of women, entrepreneurs in business, empowering them, training them, enabling them. What do you see? Where are we? Are we progressing? Are we moving backwards? Are we marching on the spot?
Good evening. Thank you, Julie, for saying yes, first and foremost. And thank you, everybody who's shown up. This is really amazing. I always say this. I put my vulnerabilities first. I'm a very nervous speaker, so you have to smile, even if you don't agree with what I'm saying.
You're great. You're so good.
Keep smiling. Keep smiling. Okay, good. I have to say, sometimes I think back about I like to say my unremarkable journey, and I'll tell you why I say this, because it's a very normal woman's journey. I met my husband, I think it was 2019. I was working in a media house, and one of us, he was living in another town, so one of us had to quit the job. And who would quit the job? Him or me? That's right. So that's what so I quit my job. A job, never mind, I had waited 18 months to get, yeah? And then, fortunately for me, I was getting married into a very entrepreneurial home. So I was able to see firsthand the unromanticized journey of business. So I listened to my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. They were running a very successful business, but the back end, I knew the challenges around that. But the second thing is, when I quit my job, because I was a fine artist, my mom-in-law was just like, man, you can make money sleeping. Well, not sleeping, but my hands can make me money. And so that encouragement from both my father and mother-in-law is how I really started my journey. My father-in-law, when we moved from Mombasa now back to Nairobi, was my first my first landlord. And I remember him telling me, Pat, you are going to pay me every single month 10,000 shillings. And I was just shaking. I was just like, how am I going to do that?
I want to contextualize. You said you got married in 2019. It
Okay,
wasn't
thank you.
2019, was it?
No, I got married in the year 2000, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
sorry,
now,
sorry.
now the numbers make sense.
We're old. Sorry, I got married in the year 2000, so we're talking about 24 years ago. Sorry about that. Thank you for that. But anyway, so that's the journey. So at that time, I was really one of those entrepreneurs that you hear, running a small business, just trying to make ends meet. And I have to say, and starting a family at the same time. So that's why I say this is a journey that many, many, many women, can recognize and understand. But through those years, I think for me, the toughest part of it was how lonely that journey was. And it was really lonely. And thinking that I had to just do everything really hard. So it was really, for me, I just said, you know what, it doesn't need to be like this. Why don't I form a community? This is much later, I'm moving forward quite quickly. If I ever have an opportunity, why don't I form a community of female entrepreneurs that we can just sit together, talk about our journeys, the challenges, so that you don't have to be as isolated as I was in the first stages of my business. The other thing that I realized as running a small business was I took a lot of things for granted. One of the things I took for granted, and I know women, we hate to say this, but it's the reality, is that I took for granted that I had a husband, as simple as that. And why did I take it for granted? Because for me to access facilities in the banks I was banking with, the shock and horror of the impact of having a husband was, I couldn't believe it. I'm there talking about my business, how hard I've worked, I'm doing all these turnovers, etc. But ultimately, the reason why I was getting my loans approved was because there was a Mr. Okelo. Now, what that does to a woman is it finishes her confidence. We're already struggling in a already very difficult space, and then I go to the bank and I'm being asked for collateral that I know I have to go and ask my father, my uncle, my husband for. Believe me, they don't have to ask those they don't have to be asked those questions. It's very difficult. And the support system that I've had along the way has been my husband, yes. I also come from a family with a very strong father figure, but ultimately was the other women behind the desk at the bank. And it was people just, Sonal, because that was the manager at the time, telling me, Patricia, you're applying for the wrong facility. The collateral you actually need is the machine that you're purchasing. Somebody telling me that you can renegotiate your loan. You're paying way too high for this. Somebody for me, when I get my overdrafts, questioning it, especially when you're getting things like short-term loans to cover, jobs, etc. Some of those rates are extremely punitive, and somebody saying, Patricia, you don't have to sign that paper. Ask the bank to give you this, ask the bank for that. But the person behind the desk was a woman. She was the one who was giving me that advice. And so for me, that's my journey, that's my testament, that's gonna be my message until you put me to the ground, is we really need to support women. They can make a difference in this world if you give them confidence, if you give them leadership opportunities.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And what I'm taking from that is the importance of allyship of women and the power of knowledge, information, right? Just that intervention changed things for you. So we'll come back to that as a solution. Kuria, thank you so much. First of all, let me say, it is an honor to have you on the panel. And I've come to you last because as an ally who sits with us, we honor and we recognize you and we thank you for your presence alongside us. And to all the men in here, please stand up and can we just give them a round of applause for joining us. Thank you so much. Woo! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you. What are you seeing? Now, you maybe you can say a little bit about what you do and the wide spectrum, and then let us know what you see when it comes to gender equity and where you think we are.
Thanks, Julie. I come from a lineage of strong women. My grandmother, on my mom's side, my mom. Those of you who may know my wife, her brand is perhaps stronger than mine, and I'm okay with that. My daughter.
Who's your? For those who don't know.
My wife is Modoni Kuria, and so she was in the banks, She was an MD of a bank well before I became a partner at PwC. So I'm used to strong women being around me. And I think that has helped me to have a perspective, which perhaps if I can share what I see and what we've done, will give you some sort of snippets of knowledge. In terms of what I've done and where I've come from, I did spend 35 years in PwC. Yes, I did. I left PwC 6 years ago. I was human capital partner for 15 years, looking after 10,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa. So therefore, policies about women and empowering women is something that I've done. I'm now the chairman of Britam, as you've heard. I'm chairman of Kwal. I'm chairman of Jenga Karume Trust. And I'm informal chairman of Sauti Sol, and also chairman of Courier Capital. So it's only on Sauti Sol and Courier Capital that the board is fully male. So I'm a bit embarrassed there.
Tisk.
But I can say that in Kwal and Jenga Karume Trust is 50% women. And I think that's really very good because I believe Deloitte have said that globally, 18% of the boards are actually occupied by women. So anything above that is good. At Britam is about 30%. So I speak from being a HR practitioner, looking at women and inclusion of women and investing in the women as a business issue. And I'd like to put it to you that whereas education is important, and I really take off my hat to what FAO and others are doing, when you look at the opportunity side, which is really where I would want to focus on, focusing on women is actually good business. And I'll tell you why. From a HR practice, engagement, staff who are engaged give you discretionary effort. And women tend to be either very engaged or disengaged. And if you have women very engaged, they deliver results way beyond what men can deliver. So getting the right number of women, because as you said, 50% of the world, or even in Africa, perhaps more than 50% are women. So when you look at some of these organizations, why would you select your leadership? Why would you select your skills from less than 50% of the total population? So having intentional policies, being very intentional as to how you recruit ladies, how you develop them through the system. And that's what I spent a lot of time doing. Because sooner or later, when you join maybe in your early 20s, you've got all the time in the world, but somewhere along the way, the decision comes, family or work. So how do you make sure that that decision does not mean you lose a very valuable person who you recruited? So coming up with policies about that is very important. Flexible working, lactation rooms. I think, Brenda, we in PwC did that in 2009, way before it became law. So just really being intentional and making sure that you're giving women a chance to be at the table. And I want to put it to the women here that really what is one of the biggest issues is the voice. And I think Akinyi has a very strong voice, you've heard it, but the voice to speak up. And sometimes it's perhaps the self-esteem is so low that women do not speak up. But I will tell you from being on the other side of so many interviews, hundreds and hundreds of interviews over my lifetime, that when you interview a lady, she may have 80% of the job and she's concerned about the 20% she can't do. And a man has 30% and he will wing it. And he will convince you he can do it. Now, a good HR person has to be able to detect that and get the best out of the lady interviewee candidate so that you can actually see what they can do. Because obviously if you walk in, you're already tense, you're stressed, and then if people shoot questions to you, you might not actually do yourself justice. But when you look at it and you look at the two employees, you'll find that actually in the long run you might get more from the lady than from the guy who promised heaven and could not actually do it. But I think that's a big thing that women sometimes don't understand, that you actually have the ability, but maybe you don't believe in yourself enough. So in terms of are we moving, I'd say we're moving. We're making huge strides. There is still issues about pay parity. I think they say globally it's 80%. World Economic Forum says that women on average earn 80% for doing the same job. Obviously, it's not sustainable. It needs to be dealt with. But it needs to be dealt with by, first of all, making sure people get the right job and that they speak up. And as I come back to the voice, speaking up and being at the table. So the forums that we have at all the companies I'm at, there's forums for women, and those are very good. But the issue is getting the point across to the men that actually supporting women is not just soft and the right thing to do, it's good for business. I really believe that.
Excellent, excellent. That's fantastic. Thank you. Apart from getting that we can't get Sauti Sol's number, what I got from that is intentionality. The importance of when you're hiring, really looking deeper. And the reason why our voices, and listen to the ladies who are up here, your voices are powerful, just never stop using them. Thank you. But it's because culturally, that's what happens in the home. Nyamaza. Don't talk. Go to the kitchen. Clean the table. You know, all those things. So we are taught to not use our voice. And so what do we do in our homes with our daughters? Even I had to check myself at one point because I noticed I was treating my daughter and my sons differently. So even we here need to check ourselves. Okay, I'm going to come to the floor in a moment, but I want to just ask, you've already tapped into it, but I want to go deeper. If you were asked what the greatest challenge we face today in investing in women and advancing equity in the gender space is, what would that be, and what would the greatest opportunity be? Who wants to go first? You look ready. Patricia's ready. And then Korea, I'll come to you.
So that I don't have to speak again. No, but seriously, for me, I honestly think that it's confidence and courage. It's a huge thing when it comes to advancing women. And that's why I think there was a research that was done, and I'm very worried about quoting anything, but it was with IFC during COVID. And they asked, one of the questions is, what is the non-financial aid that a woman wanted? And the highest thing, I'm sure women in the room, you already know the answer, was mentorship, mentorship, mentorship. And when you go down to check, when you go down and ask, what does mentorship really mean to women? And since I don't have to be politically correct, yeah, I'm going to say that mentorship is hand-holding, and hand-holding is a lot of work. How do you measure? How do you quantify? Who's going to pay for it, you know? And every opportunity I'll get, I'll just keep speaking about it because I have seen the impact of mentorship on my life. When you speak to the women within our network, they speak about their mentors, their coaches. When we get into our inboxes after panel sessions like this, what happens is people are asking, and many women will be asking for mentorship and coaching and hand-holding. Now, the reason why I talk about hand-holding is I don't want to sugarcoat what that means. It really means when a call out for a grant sometimes goes out, and we've done this in Kayana before, is we ask the people who have created this wonderful document that women look at and exclude themselves. And we say, do you mind coming into our space and hand-holding the application process? That is the reality. So when you're looking back and putting all these call-outs, and then we get calls that there's no uptake, it's because the woman has already excluded herself from it. Yeah? So for me, it's the number one thing that has, I think that, first of all, why Kayana exists, why we have a community, is to help more and more of us succeed when these opportunities and call-outs are made. So for me, that's my powerful one thing.
That's incredibly powerful. Thank you. Korea, let me come to you. And then who's next? Who's ready? Martha, okay. No, Korea first.
Me first. Okay. Julie, I don't know if there's one thing, because I think that education is very important. And in order to be at the starting line, you need to have women's education. And I believe a lot of work is being done there. Where I think we are struggling is in creating opportunities for women once they've left school. So I think that policies obviously work, having forums such as this work, but I think that we need not just to be talking to the women, but also making sure our leaders, and because, as I said, 80% of the boards are men, understand that actually it's not sustainable, it's not the right thing to do, and investing in women and making sure that women are there. And the voice of women is different. Their perspectives are different. And they need to be, I think even women themselves and men, it's the cultural thing, need to say that when a woman speaks, she speaks from whatever perspective she has. Because it's very easy for us to stereotype and say, she's being emotional. She's being, and I think many women leaders get that sort of thing. It's just for us to know that we accept women as they are, because it's that they bring to the table. I think that it's really a communication thing, and we were told 280 years is what it's going to take. I think it should happen sooner. The organizations I am in, we are very intentional. We have policies. We are just making sure that whenever we have a forum, if it's a board meeting, a committee, there must be a woman to give that alternative voice. So I think the women just also need to step up and make sure their voices are heard. Because it's only when they are heard that men will understand it's not a threat. I don't think it's a threat. It's really just the world be a better place when women have their opinions heard, right, and they're able to take decisions that affect them. So I don't think there's one thing. I think it's just for us to continue and maybe increase the pace and have more. I can see there's 5, 6 men here. I thought I was going to be the only one. I was a bit, but if they can take back this, that actually empowering women is actually a good thing to do.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And use that voice, break those ceilings, yes. Martha?
Yeah, thank you again. And now going to the issue of which is the barrier, I look at it from the biological responsibilities that women have. You are a mother, you are a wife, you are a worker, you are a cook, you are a cleaner, everything. And when you look at those responsibilities, they are overwhelming, and you'll find many women are stressed. And that's why many of them will shy away from responsibilities. Even when opportunities open up, go to higher institutions of learning. When there is promotion, most women will shy away because they have all those responsibilities. It's about work or it's about my family. How do we balance the two? It's one of the biggest challenges. And what needs to be done, or what is being done, we shall say there are policies. The policies are there, but to what extent are those policies implemented? They are there, very good policies, even at the workplace. But when you go to analyze how many of those policies are effective, most of it is not. What we need to do is we need to advocate for our rights. We need, first of all, to know what the policies are. And when we know what the policies are, what are my rights? What am I entitled to? Should I not work because I have a baby? There are policies, So if we know what our rights are, and if we advocate for it, we shall make even bigger strides than what we've made now. And it's not a single voice that can create impact. It's collective voices that makes it stronger, and we can be able to advocate for the right policies to be put in place and implementation of those policies so that the heavy weight on the women can be offloaded. And that's how women will be able to advance to the different levels that they need to be.
Thank you. Wow, that is important. Brenda, let me come to you next.
Thank you.
Queen Akinyi.
So let me just talk about maybe the corporate world. What are the things that are there and what can we do? I think each institution is different, but it's good to also do your own diagnostics. And I think what we tend to find is you will get a lot of ladies coming in at the entry level, and then we get this, what I'd call a stagnation at the middle management level. And I think it comes to what you've just said. It's that how do we encourage, handhold, take ladies and say, how are we going to promote and ensure that they can become senior leaders and go right up? Because this thing of the glass ceiling, it is there to be shattered. and we can all play a role. But do we take the time to do the diagnostics and then to be very purposeful? To have those programs for those ladies in that middle, so you have to have a constant funnel. The lower level, we're going to move them to the middle level, we're going to move them to the upper level, we're going to give them opportunities that they can embrace that aren't going to be so difficult. We talk about parity, and it's improving. I'm glad to say I work for a company where the pay it's on parity. The board level is 50-50, so that is great. But I ask myself, when we do interviews, so we ensure there will be ladies' interviews, do we make sure that the panel has lady members? It's holistic. And until we truly focus on this, and we do the diagnostics, and you truly, even at the HR level, decide, so when we're promoting, do we have ladies there? Do we understand the challenges? What are we doing to overcome them? We have to spend some very intentional time. And sometimes that just isn't there because you're chasing the P&L. You're chasing everything that's going on today. And that intentionality just has to be made. But once you do it, it unlocks this amazing, amazing power that we all are in this room today, the power of the female. She will bring, as Korea has said, 110% when you give her the right framework, the right support system. So all I can say is, how do we do it? It's not one size fits all, but it's about being intentional and having courage to even put your hand up when you see the interview panel and even say, is there a lady on the interview panel? And see what reaction you get. But you can, that's everybody, you're pushing a little, until it becomes the
And
norm.
it makes a difference.
It makes a difference.
Makes a difference. Intentionality again. Thank you. Akinyi, your thoughts?
I would like to start with the solutions. I feel like we need to get into a space where we are intentional, we are genuine and authentic about the conversations on investing in women. I come from a grassroots organization. Most of my work are done at the grassroots level. And so many times, women are just called into spaces to fill a gap or to please a donor. Can we get into a space where we are intentional? And I love when Patricia is speaking about mentorship. So many of us have dreams, we have ambitions, we have very beautiful dreams, we have very beautiful ideas, but we do not know the right doors to knock. Or maybe the issue of confidence, we do not have, I call it the audacity. We do not have the audacity enough to knock those doors. 3 months ago, with the support of Mastercard Foundation, they did an assessment to Rebirth of a Queen. And I love that today she started a conversation about the I. They did an assessment in Rebirth of a Queen. We are an organization that has 80% young women, but it was a shocker when you were called gender blind. I almost called the consultant and told her, wait, are we having a personal fight? What do you just mean that we are gender blind? But it was just an issue of us being intentional about how we are programming. And right now we are in this journey of gender mainstreaming, programming all our programs to really include women intentionally. If we come out and we say we are investing in women, are we only investing in women in tokenism? Are we only calling women on the table to make people feel like, okay, yeah, they have women? Are we putting women in board members, actually making them feel like, You know, there are positions that you give people and it comes as a shocker because you didn't empower them. You've not walked with them that journey. You just took a kinyi and put them in a board just to make other people feel like, okay, we are supporting women. I feel it's time that we need to go back and have very authentic conversation on inclusivity. And if we are investing in women, if really we want to accelerate progress, then let's do it intentionally. But we are making progress. One day, when you're free, come to Rebirth of a Queen. Listen to the dreams those girls have. When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. Why do you want to be a lawyer? Because Mom Pauline, I do not want a girl to ever go through what I went through. When I grow up, I want to be a police officer, and I go ahead and get shocked because, God, I don't like police officers. You look at them and they're like, the reason why they want to be there, it's because they want to make a change. So as much as so many times I get lost into the injustice that is in the world right now, I am one person who has hope that if we keep on doing our work intentionally, then 280 years is too far. We are getting there, but we have to be very intentional and call ourselves out. It was so hard for me to accept that we are gender blind, but it is the matter of starting the conversation with I. What am I doing as a person? How am I holding those spaces for young women? How is the organization holding the spaces? And what can we collectively do? Thank you.
So powerful, because it comes back to the diagnostics, being very, very clear, and back to the intentionality. But you know, I got something from you listening to you just now. You know, development players in the room, we have quite a few. Hands up, hi, thank you for coming, No, put your hands up, don't be shy, wherever you are. Yes, that we tend to, thank you. We tend to say to people, we're gonna do capacity building. I think we need to go and get our capacity built by the Akinis and sit and listen and understand and observe, because actually, and Joyce, I'm going to come to you for some thoughts. Joyce is on our gender team. She's such a champion. Another woman who just inspires me. And it just occurs to me, but even to sit and say gender blind, and yet you rescue girls. You rescue the same girls, the young girls who were where you were a few years ago. You look after them, you train them. They make beautiful leather bags. Please check them out before you leave. And so there's something for us to learn from you, not just to tell you about your relationship with gender. So I humbly take that. I take that. And we'll come back to that in days to come. I'm coming this way because I want to challenge us personally. There's another issue that's an important issue, is that we employ women in our homes. All of us employ women in our homes, most of us. How do we hold ground for them? How do we empower them and give them wind beneath their wings? What's our view? And I want to introduce, please, Wangeshi, come forward. Wangeshi, come out. Let's give her a round of applause. Because what Wangeshi has done is create a guide and toolkits for how we should hold fort for these women. So please, Wangeshi, tell us about it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I am like Pat. I give my vulnerabilities in front of everybody and say I don't really like to speak to everybody, but I'm here. Domestic workers are some of the most marginalized people in the world. ILO states that 76% of domestic workers are women. In Kenya alone, we say we have 2 million, but we think it's probably 4 to 5 million that we have, which means that's 7 to 8% of the population of Kenya that are domestic workers. Now, we do have laws and we do have legal regulations about domestic workers, but most of us here do not adhere to them. Now, I want my brother, who is my biggest supporter, and in fact, he's my +1 today. He always says that the wearer of the shoe knows where it hurts most. So I want you to think just for a minute about the things that I'm about to say. Imagine you were working 14 to 16 hours a day. And for good behavior, you get Sunday off, but you don't get the full 24 hours. You're told, usisahau, breakfast, lakini urudi before dinner. And that's not the law. Imagine you're of childbearing age and you have conceived a child, but it doesn't fit in with your employer, so they fire you. Imagine you've spent the whole day working, and then in the evening, they tell you, please go and sit outside while we eat, because you're not allowed to eat the food there. Imagine 20 years, if you make it that long, to work for the same employer, because you don't come from a background that has given you the tools to learn how to save your money, because chances are you're making $50 or $60, and this is somebody who probably makes $100,000, but that's what they pay you. So 20 years from now, you're not actually going to your retirement, you're actually going to look for another job. Imagine that you're in this person's shoes, and I understand what you were saying, Akinyi. The physical and sexual abuse that the domestic workers suffer, but nobody believes them. But because they need the job, they decide that they are going to stick it out. Statistics, in 2020, 600 domestic workers were interviewed and surveyed. 540 of them responded. 86 of them confirmed they had been sexually assaulted in their jobs. That is 16%. So if we take this section right here, if you're 100 people, it means 16 of you did that, and you were complicit. So there's a lot of things that we need to learn about domestic workers. Some of the things that we need to do as people, because most of us are probably employers of domestic workers, is that we need to stop stereotyping and stigmatizing the domestic worker and seeing that because most of them, and for the purposes of this, we're going to talk about women, we need to stop seeing as if they're beneath us. And we're talking about the fact that Martha was talking about women, they're tired, we're moms, we're caregivers. But the reason why we are able to do any of those things is because of the women who are in our homes. They're the ones who are taking care of us. They take care of our elderly. They take care of our children, who are our most prized possessions, and they take care of our homes. So what we need to do is we need to adhere to the laws and the regulations, because they do exist for a reason. Even if you feel that that they don't deserve it, they do deserve it, okay? You need to know how to protect yourself so that there's no miscommunication between you and them. You must recruit right, you must hire right, you must retain right. And most importantly, you must support and empower these women, because again, they are the women that take care of us every single day. And lastly, you must know who works in your home. It is not enough that you wake up in the morning and you decide, because you are a busy mom and you've got 3.5 children at home and a picket fence, and you decide that I just need somebody because Mama Njoroge's cousin's sister's brother decided that Wageshi was going to come from work for you because she's that person. She's not that person, because Mama Njoroge's cousin's brother's sister doesn't know her. You must know intentionally who works in your home. So when I say that I coach employers for you to be able to know who's working in your home, it is because it is important for you to know who's working in your home. Who are you leaving your children with? And a very sad statistic in Kenya, we have probably the highest faked IDs in Africa. So when somebody comes to your home and tells you, this is my ID, are you sure it's them? Or is it their sister? So I will leave you with this. My name is Wageshi Kamau. I am the founder of Good Housekeeping Africa. I am a published author of How to Manage Domestic Workers, the Employer's Guidebook, and Guiding Hands, How to Train and Onboard Your Domestic Worker. I am an employer and domestic worker coach, and what I do is I educate and coach employers on how to run and create a harmonious and functional environment for all parties involved. So please, let's put our houses in order.
That was powerful. That was incredibly powerful. Everybody thinking, huh? Yeah, and we can learn. Every day we can learn. I want to come to the audience for questions. Actually, Wangeshi, can I ask you to take a seat in case anybody has a question? I'm seeing people nodding. In case people have a question for you, because I think that we forget that. We talk about gender equity, we talk about gender, and we never think about this cadre of people who are so critical, so critical. I think I heard the word 5 million. So I want to come questions, solutions, comments for the panel. So I'm looking. And you know, I have this thing where the first person to put your hands up first, because you'll think about it later, and then there won't be time. So, young man, introduce yourself, and then please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Nikabet Gaddafa. I'm from Fiti Telematics, and also I represent a company called ARM. Just to brag a bit, ARM is in charge of every given electronic device that you guys are using. I have a community, a hardware community around Nairobi, whereby we, gather around, train people, in things to do with hardware. And this is because in the next 10 years, I believe there are careers which will be changed, and we're trying to upskill people in that way. My biggest question, and I think my biggest problem is, right now, I believe after we did some, sign-ups and everything, only 20%, and 20% is very little, like 600 member people, so 20% is the ladies, regardless of how much we push for this thing. And it's something very easy. Yeah, I believe if right now we have ChatGPT, right? Anybody can learn it in a given day, right? And this is something they can get a career out of it, right? And I don't know, I've tried to push it. I've tried to get friends to push it outside there. Like, guys, it's 1 + 2 = 3, right? I don't know what criteria, based on the panelists that have been there, what criteria will be best to engage with the other. And this is for gender equality because of the future. We don't need to leave anyone behind. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for your story and for your question. Thank you, and for the work that you're doing. So for clarity, you're only getting 20% women applying for this upskilling or retraining that you are doing, and you're asking, how do I increase this number? That's what it is. Okay, I'll come back. I want to take 2 more questions, and then I'll come to the panel. Yes, okay.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Becca, a special needs advocate and founder of Moms Nest Kenya. Currently working with 97 parents, 91 being moms, and 6 being male, sorry. My question to the panel is, and I'd written it down, so just allow me to read the question. So in advocating for children with special needs, how can we ensure that the investment in women's progress also prioritizes resources and support systems that address the unique needs and challenges faced by young women and young girls with disabilities, fostering their empowerment and inclusion from an early age?
Very, very good. I saw a few more hands. I'm going to take one more here, and then I will come around after they answer. One more time, please. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Mine is not really a question. It's just a commentary and maybe a call to action. Okay, so I can't see many hijabs in the room. I'm coming from a point of, or a lens of culture, or tradition, or religion, and we've spoken a lot about inclusion, about intentionality, about culture, about our mothers, about education. And I'd like to say, like, sometimes I feel like people like me would never be in rooms like this or the other rooms I operate in if the mothers in my family or in my culture didn't fight for us to have different rights from what they were used to, and their mothers. So just saying sometimes to have people in positions of power, positions of access, always open up those doors if you see somebody a bit different. Woman, yes, but also go to the more disenfranchised people where you can. Think of the Honorable Amna Mohammed, Nadia, Umi Bashir. We find so few of them for people like me to look up to. But if we extend more opportunities to more disenfranchised people, then we can get further ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for using your voice to say that. Thank you so much. Let me come to the panel now, and look, it's two interesting and important questions. One is about how to get more women to see the opportunities and participate. And I want to say, there's a raft of things, just very quickly as I come to the panel, that those girls may have household chores. So they may want to do it, but they don't know. Or they may have a baby at home and they may need to be staying. And so there's so many complexities. But I want to come to your experience of how can we get more women to tap into opportunities like that. And Joyce, I'm going to come to you too after I finish with the panel. The other one is, women, young women and girls living with disabilities. And what more can we do? So let's start.
Okay, so thank you so much. Number one, if there's something that we are learning is collaboration and co-creating programs together with the people that we envision to be the beneficiaries. How far are you going to have this conversation? To be honest, if you ask me in my comfort zone, can you practice carpentry? No one, I didn't see any woman in my lineage doing that. All the women that I look up to, they're doing something else. So can we try collaborating and co-creating programs together? And this is something that happened to us when we were funded to support young women venture into leather. We assumed that is what young women want. And in the first cohort, yes, we had 10 young women and 3 young men. But at the end of the day, the 3 young men became the best because they put their mind into it. And we went back to the community and we were like, okay, we are really championing for young women to do this. How can we make it better? And the lessons that we learned was so amazing. The environment, what kind of an environment are we going to put for these young women to even be in that space? So I champion for collaboration and co-creating programs together with the people we envision. Go a step further. Intentionality. Wow. Dare yourself.
Thank you.
Have an audacity.
Wow, thank you. Please pass the mic to Martha. Thank you.
Yeah, she has partly touched what I wanted to say. But if you have 20% of women, it also depends on the criteria that you're using in terms of selecting what are the conditions, what are the training hours, what is the duration of the training. There's so many factors in play which you may need to look at. I just want to give a short example. There was a call by the Commonwealth. Commonwealth has scholarships for all the Commonwealth countries. But at one point when they made an analysis, they realized that less than 30% of the programs, master's programs, PhDs, are being taken by women. And the whole issue was a rapid assessment, try and establish why that is happening. So in other words, I'm saying it's possible to do a rapid assessment, just to find out what could be the reasons. And one of the reasons was the information that was going out was not reaching the women. And so the Commonwealth had to look for an institution in Africa that is dealing with women and girls' education. And they landed on FAWE. And they deliberately gave us 54 slots per year, 100% women. So it's deliberate effort to see how you can have the women benefit from that process. So like she's saying, be intentional in terms of how do we make sure that the women get the information and at the same time they benefit. I can touch shortly on inclusivity, persons with a disability. And we usually say that women, there's double jeopardy. One, you are a woman. The second one, you're with a disability. So it becomes very challenging. But there are many actors in play. I've seen there is quite many civil society organizations that are into inclusiveness. And when we are talking about inclusivity, we are also talking about persons with disability. So there is deliberate effort. But again, it's not adequate. A lot more needs to be done. Because whatever we are doing, we are touching the tips. But the issue is deeper. Some of the persons with disability, you'll not find them on the streets. Yeah. You will not see them. Yeah. So what do we do about that? There must be also deliberate effort to really come up with percentages. In FAWE, we have percentages. It's deliberate. If we are looking for 30% persons with a disability, we shall look for them and we shall fill those positions.
Please give that a round of applause.
Thank you.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Yes, please go ahead.
I'll just speak about the inclusivity and just say we're not at 30% wherever I've seen. But companies which are progressive are now using the word diversity and inclusion. So it's not just a women's empowerment, but it's diversity and inclusion. And obviously, global organizations are looking at all inclusion, all diversity. And I agree that it's something that needs attention. I think we are very slow to the mark. The women issue is ahead of people with disability, but companies now are looking at not just how do we empower women, but how do we also include everybody and have the diversity of everybody. And I say everybody because we're in Kenya, we're not in Uganda. Everybody. And I think that's what diversity looks at. So I think that's where we are going. And if FAWE is doing 30%, well done. I don't know if any other organization is even close to a percent.
And they're doing it because they're intentional about it. So that's a learning, Brenda, please.
Thank you. Once again, I'll go back to laws. There's actually laws that we should be adhering to when it comes to employment in terms of inclusion of disability. I think it's even 5%. But how many of us do it? And then indeed, you should be getting incentives for doing it. People would just rather not get the incentives because they just think it's too much hard work. But actually, if you really look at inclusion and diversity and you look at the definition of disability, for all of you who wear glasses, okay? And the problem that maybe we all have is bias and how we define it. And if we could just have more conversations, because indeed DEI, inclusion and diversity, equity is very much part of what I'd call global organizations and definitely catching up here in Kenya. It includes what the young lady said there about including people from all cultures. It includes about being sensitive in this month of Ramadan. Do you let people go home early? Do you understand what it means to get on a Zoom call as you drink water and the person on the other side cannot quench their thirst? Do we intentionally think about some of these small things? But when we put our mind to it, we can. We can. So I hear you. And how do you advocate for this? You actually need to also volunteer your voice in different organizations. You come to occasions like this, you meet people, and you see where can I lend a voice and make a difference. Because I tell you, in terms of inclusion and diversity, women, as Corey said, we went ahead with that affinity group and those milestones. There's so much work for so many communities. But that work can be done. And it is not difficult when we use that word, intentionality and focus. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Patricia?
I'm going to use a story, but I'll speak a little bit. I'm sure, Martha, you have a lot of statistics, and when you look at data, at a glance, there's a lot of stories behind that. And we did a study just recently. I think we released it on Monday or Tuesday. And one of the things we were looking at is when women, boys and girls go into school, it's almost 50-50. And then, of course, a myriad of things happen along that chain, and it reduces the number of women. But even going deeper into the subjects now that are being women are studying against the ones of male, like so STEM graduates, for example, we're still looking at 70-30, 70 being male, 30 being female. ICT, the same numbers, and natural science, maths, and statistics, we're looking at the same numbers. So there's a story in the data. And one of the things I would encourage the young gentleman who was speaking is some of the question marks to put is how was the information being disseminated? And there may be an assumption that the way you're running the program is everybody's at the same level. So some of those things is just interrogating it and seeing. And I think we were even looking, when we went further in the data, it was some of it was in India, was seeing at what point are boys and girls interacting with technology. And maybe that is the reason why, in terms of advancement and in synthesizing the information, it may be around that space. So there's a lot of data. And you have now people who have those statistics who can explain it to you. The story I'm going to tell is around dialogues. I run an events business, and last year we worked with a technology company that is very deep in ensuring that every single voice in the room gets heard. And I think that's how they've built a really robust business. But their example was, we were running this event, there was a lot of tension, a lot of assumptions. These were people from different cultures who had come into Kenya, and we are all Kenyans who are running the thing. So the way the communication is being given, the way we're receiving it, in terms of context and understanding, it was very, very, very difficult on day one. And what this organization did is they just stopped everything. And they said, since we're the ones running the conference, we need to get into a room, lock ourselves there, and listen to every single voice in the room. For me, that was the most powerful thing I had ever experienced, because every person had the opportunity to say what the problem was, where the problem in understanding was, and then for us to move forward and run the remaining 2 days of the conference. So sometimes understanding culture, understanding perspectives, especially when it comes to people with disabilities, people from minority areas, we can't be all things. But dialogue is so powerful for those conversations to flow, and of course, creating a safe environment for that to happen. For me, that was a real learning curve last year in the work that we do.
Wow, the power of dialogue. Thank you for that. Wangeshi, it's so interesting because you don't have a problem of not enough women coming into this sector. You actually have a lot of women. And maybe that's because of the nature of the work they end up doing, So I don't know if you have any perspectives on that, but also it would be really good to tap into, what does the law say about people with disabilities around domestic workers? Is there anything?
No, not to my knowledge, and maybe somebody else knows. I'm never afraid to say that I don't know. But nothing that I've read has got something to do with disabilities. But I also think that, in the African community, we have grown up on secrets. We don't really talk about the things that go on at home. I remember, say my mother was sick when I was growing up, she would, if somebody called, she would make sure that she says, and don't tell them that I'm sick. Don't tell them that I've been in the hospital or anything like that. We grew up with that fear. I also believe that the way we are, social media has played a part. Being educated has played a part. So when we talk about disabilities, you have to start with one voice. You have to start talking about it. A lot of people hide the disabilities. They hide the children at home. They hide their relatives at home. They don't want to talk about it. So even if we are, and there is a disabilities community, I believe my brother George was on one of the committees, etc., that had to do with disabilities. And the fact that a lot of people don't even know that that's there, and it was government funded, I believe, originally, and then it turned private. So I think that when we start to talk about it more, when we start, there's certain questions that I ask, and people do say that I'm a bit of a troublemaker, is that if I go somewhere and you tell me that you're opening up a new restaurant, etc., the first thing I'm going to ask you is there a ramp? because
Right.
most people don't think about that. You think about, okay, well, there's stairs, but what about the person who can't get up the stairs? So I think that the more that we start to talk about it, the more that we're going to find more solutions, and the more that what I call the elephant in the room, we begin to talk about the elephant in the room.
Destigmatize. That's just the first, and support. I want to, Joyce, come to you and your thoughts on those questions, how to get more women participating in opportunities, and also the question around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Your wisdom, please. And then I'm going to take 2 more questions because we are nearly done. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, fantastic panelists. It's so wonderful listening and learning from everyone. If I was to answer Julie's question, like very authentically, so the Mastercard Foundation is on a learning journey. Somebody actually asked me, well, you must be a lot of people. I'm like, no, actually, globally we are under 500. Maybe we are very loud. So the foundation decentralized into the continent about 4 years ago, and we are on a mission to learn. So recently, we've also been working around refreshing our gender strategy, which some of our implementing friends are on the panel, Mother and Akinyi. Thank you very much for the work you do, and of course everyone else. But then we came across a very interesting statistic as we were doing our diagnosis, and we were asking, what do you tell big people who care about GDP, that young women actually matter? And so we came across this statistic, and the research is being led by McKinsey, so we'll release it at the right time. And the GDP of Africa is estimated to be about 3.1 trillion USD. Between 2000 and 2020 to 2022, a period of 3 years, the GDP of Africa benefited from 340 million USD contribution from young women. And we were focusing on young women. But the sad story is that was actually a reduction by about 7%. Because you all know what happened in those years, right? From South Africa to Cairo to Morocco to across sub-Saharan Africa, we heard that over 60% of the jobs that were lost were jobs that were held by women generally, but particularly young women, because also they were holding most of the bottom of the pyramid jobs. So their contribution to the GDP of the continent is shrinking. But you can already see the potential. So park that. When you think about the foundation's commitment to reach 21 million young women, you actually might think it's a very big number. Let's even talk about the full number, which is 30 million young people generally. And we know that Africa has a population of about 1.3 billion people. Is that correct? About 1.3, right? If 75% of that population is young, people below 35, we're talking about around 950 million humans, right? Split that into half, and it gives you a cool anywhere between 450 to 500,000 young women in the continent. What's 21 million of 500 million? It's a drop, isn't it? But it's so difficult reaching even that drop. It's so difficult reaching the 20% the young man talked about. So when we do a good diagnosis, what it tells us is there are women stuck in their homes because they're caring for sick children, or children that were born with disabilities, or actually women that are on the run with babies strapped on their back because either they are in a conflict zone, or actually somebody has caused conflict and there's war happening in the home and they are running somewhere in a safe house. So how we do this, Julie, how we get it right is actually staying long enough. Young Africa Works strategy runs until 2030, But I am sure we'll be here beyond 2030 to say there's more work to be done.
I saw the hands. When I do come back to the panel, we're going to do a very quick fire final round where you will just share a snapshot of your final words of advice or guidance for all of us. I'm going to come round to the people who had their hands up and ask you, instead of a question for your panel, twist your question into a suggestion or words of wisdom for us all to take away. So I'll start here and then go round. And as fast as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Nancy. I am a global HR professional, and so DEI is something that is very close to my heart. I was going to ask about mentorship and coaching, but since we are not asking the question, I'll challenge every person here today that is in charge of a team or is a leader in some level of responsibility. If you're an entrepreneur and you have employees that you have, how are you providing coaching and mentorship to the young women in your organization, whether you're in corporate, whether you're an entrepreneur, and how do you measure growth to see the impact that the guidance that you've provided for these women, the steps that you're taking? Yeah.
All right, my name is Sylvia. I'm in the healthcare space, and I want to turn the light on the public sector. Across Africa, the biggest chunk of our population is the public sector. So if we're going to talk about accelerating progress, we have to think about women in the public sector. I've served as the head of AstraZeneca, now I'm in local manufacturing of medicines. And I know in the COVID era, when we looked at the fall in income of people in the public sector, we had to look at women. The earning capacity of women dropped from about 170 shillings per day to 80 shillings. If you broke it down to what they were spending their money on, it's three major things. It's shelter, and these are mainly women-led households in slums, rural areas, in refugee camps. They were spending it on shelter, education, and food. Actually, it was food second, then education third. Healthcare came a fourth, distant fourth. So when we think about accelerating progress, we need to ask ourselves, we of privilege, what are you doing in your organization and in your big long-term plan to support these women in rural areas, in urban slums, and in refugee camps, in helping them take care of shelter? Because if I went to the Dadaab camp, and the women in the Dadaab camp, 80% of the refugees are women and children. They use shukas and they share with each other to cover their little shelters. When the rains come down, all that is gone. What do we do to support the women in refugee camps such as Dadaab, not even Kakuma? When you go to Madare and Kibera, the biggest chunk of the stress of women who have girls in their homes is pads. We talk about pad poverty, menstrual poverty. You and I can afford pads. That woman has to let her girl go have unprotected sex to make 80 shillings and spend 40 shillings on a pad. It is not fair. We can't be comfortable with these women in Kibera and Madare, which is right next door, where our house helps are coming from, and Kangemi, and they're spending 40 shillings on pads. They can't afford it. So ask yourself, what have you done about it? When it comes to food, we know food for education programs. Are we just spectators? When this food for education came up, it saved many women in urban and rural areas because they know at least my child will go to school and have a meal. So whatever little you're paying her, the big burden is lifted when the kid gets free food at school. So challenge yourself and ask yourself, what are you doing in these areas? Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to have to take one more and then wind up.
One of the greatest gifts you can give to the world is a healthy version of yourself. So sometimes we as women think that the most senior version of us is being a human doing instead of being a human being. So as we're investing time and resources and ideas in other people, even our children, our family members, and others that we love, invest in yourself, and you'll find everything starting to work out. Thank you.
It's been amazing. I come back to the wisdom of the panel as we close. And just a final word of wisdom. What do you want to leave this room with? What do we take away? I think, Wageshi, I'll start on that end with you and come all the way down to Akinyi.
What I can say is, don't give up. I started this journey, I want to say a year ago. I left a well-paying job. I had a good job, I had a good team. And I remember my team couldn't believe that I was giving it all up to come and, as they say, to die on this hill. And literally it is to die on this hill, because there are days I wake up and I say, I can't believe this is what I'm fighting for, because really it's a fight. And you know, I may sit up here or stand up here and it seems like it's all hunky-dory, but it's not, because as I know, I'm swimming against the tide. For me to say that you need to do better, change is hard. Change is hard for anybody, including myself. So when I am posting on, Instagram, at my age, that's, it takes an act of Congress. I wake up in the morning and I say, I can't believe it's Thursday, and I gotta do this. And when I think about it that way, and I say, but there's a reason why I'm doing this. And when I get pushback and people, and I'll be very honest, ladies, and please don't take offense, my largest client base is men. As hard as it is for women to hear this. And the people who push back the most are women. Yeah. In my inbox, the women that actually turn abusive because of what I am doing. And the more they're abusive, the more, no matter how much it hurts me, because I could tell you stories both of employers, the things that they go through with domestic workers, and the things that domestic workers go with happen because of employers. And when I first started doing this research, it made me cry all the time. And I kept telling my mother, or I tell my brother, I said, I can't do this because of the stories that come. But when a woman comes into your inbox and says, why are you educating a domestic worker? I just cannot believe it. But what I'm gonna say, no matter how hard it is, if that is the hill you're gonna die on that hill.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Thank you. Wow.
For me, it's two things. The first thing is, and I think we can't say enough of it, is that we're doing things afraid. I'm hearing the statistics. Dr. Vito, when you're talking, I'm just like, man, will we even forget 280 years? Are we going to solve? I mean, the problems just seem insurmountable, to be honest. And you start feeling like maybe we need to be a Mastercard to solve the problems.
Foundation.
But I think for me, the big thing is just do it afraid. In the core of our being, we know there's something wrong with the way the world is. We know it. And so it takes a private person to help solve a public problem. Yeah? Don't leave and say, wow, that was a nice story, great to hear, and commit to doing something today about the public problems you're hearing here being spoken about. If you feel you can't do it, Kayana, that's my plug, is here to help you form community and plug into other amazing women. We have a lot of our members in the room here, Nyayo Soko moms who are doing something. People who've been through the program who are doing amazing things to just help solve this huge, humongous problem that is with us in the world today. The other thing I'm going to say is this tagline of Mastercard. Foundation. Mastercard Foundation, thank you. Provide dignified and fulfilling work. We can make it our own personal philosophy as well.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's commit. I mean, if we are already employing people in our home, let's commit, each one of us, to provide dignified and fulfilling work for the people who we employ in our organizations, however small they are, in our homes. Thank you.
Wonderful. And to learn how to do that, please see Wangeshi before you leave in our homes, for our homes.
Thank you. Thank you. The word privilege was used, and it's really been a privilege today to be here and to hear from all of you, and thank you to all who made it happen. All I can say is this is a collective effort that requires commitment from all of us and from all corners. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Korea.
So earlier I talked about voices, and just hearing the voices of Habida and Kambua was very powerful. And I think that's what I want to end on, that we must speak up. It may be difficult, but we must speak up. Because first of all, we must speak up to other women, because I agree with you, Wangeshi, that sometimes women are their worst enemy. They pull each other down, or they keep each other down. So speaking to each other, but speaking to the men. I think there's a need for unity, and just realizing that you have it. Just remember that a man has 30%, he can wing it. A woman has 80%, she doesn't think she can do it. Just remember that, because that is what happens every single day, in whichever field you're in, whether it's in music. If you look at who are the biggest musicians, they're men. Someone, in fact, today I had a young lady who asked to just, she sent me an email and said she wanted to meet me, I guess because of a Saudi connection. And she's an artist. And I asked her, how can I help you? She said, I think that you can help me grow it to become the next biggest artist in whatever it was that she's in. And when I listened to her, I asked her, aren't you selling yourself short? Because her dreams and her asks were just so low. But she said, as you said, it's a boys' club. And it is an issue, and not just in the arts, it's an issue in many of our sectors. So it's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully not 280 years. Let's keep on speaking up. And even in the I know we've not talked about the political side. That is important that we speak about it. It's not just good for business, it's good for the country, it's good for Africa if women are in positions of leadership. And we know it, we just know it. We just have to make it happen.
Excellent, thank you so much, thank you. Martha.
One thing. I want to say that if we asked each and every lady in this room to give her story, we would hear a lot. And therefore what I say is that you are not alone. When you think about yourself, it's like, I'm here. But you're not alone. We are many in the struggle. One time I told somebody that you'll go to hospital thinking you're very sick. Get to hospital, see those that are there. You will walk back home. You came in very sick, but you will walk back home better than when you went. So we need to support each other. There is usually a tendency of looking at women in leadership, and you think those women are okay. They are not. They equally need your support. Let the young support the old. Let the adults also support. It's a two-way, because we make a lot of assumptions. And in all this, we are talking about empowerment, we are talking about investment. It calls for resources, both the human resource and the financial resources. As FAWE, we have achieved what we have because of the partners that we have. And I can't conclude my talk without mentioning the Mastercard Foundation. We have walked a journey. When we pride in the many girls that we have empowered out there, it has been a journey of 10 years. We are now in another journey of 7 years in 10 countries to empower girls and women. Thank you so much to the foundation.
Thank you, Martha. Akinyi, Queen Akinyi.
It is so hard to speak after all the powerful voices that I've had. And just to note that I'm one of the people that I'll never, ever declare myself self-made. I stand in the shoulders of very intentional people. I stand in the shoulders of people who picked me up at the age of 19 and told me that domestic violence, you cannot stay there anymore. I am a model. I didn't tell you that I'm the current Mrs. Universe Kenya queen.
Oh!
And the first time I went into the runway, I went there afraid. And it is a woman who looked at me and told me, you have the most powerful walk that I've ever seen in this world. And I have never looked back. Trust me, I even model on the road. Yes. At the age of 19, at the age of 20, when I was just coming out of a domestic violence situation, Shofco, through Kennedy Odede, gave me an opportunity.
Wow.
And trust me, until this day, Kennedy Odede looks at me and tells me, little girl, you deserve to be in spaces that your voices are out there.
Wow.
2023, February, I received a call from Jahazi, the programs manager of Mastercard Foundation, and he looked at me, and for the first time, I trusted a man to guide me without feeling afraid that I'm going to be sexually abused or exploited. In the last 9 months, Mastercard Foundation have not only been a funder, they've been a partner. And if there's one value that they live with, is listening. The number of times we've made calls and we are like, oh God, whatever, this work is just too heavy. To have an organization look at us and tell us that we are going to capacity build you. We are going to walk with you through that journey. We are going to support you have audited accounts. It is amazing. And my last call of actions to the people in the development space, please stop sending us autopilot's email that we regret to inform you we are not funding you kindly. Please tell us where we are going wrong. Please tell us what we are doing wrong in those proposals. And please stop sending call of proposals if you already know people you're going to work with. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow, and can I just say, for us as a foundation, thank you for the words you've said. Shofco actually is a partner of ours as well. This is not about PR at all. We came here to learn from you and to listen and to connect. And maybe there's an opportunity to continue listening. We can explore. I think we've just started to scratch the surface. But we believe truly in empowering local African organizations. And the only other work we do outside of Africa is in Canada because we are registered there with indigenous communities. And I don't know if you've read what they've gone through. And so we value indigenous communities. And in indigenous communities, they refuse to take scholarships and go to universities. And we asked, what can we do? And they said, you come here and you give value to our knowledge. And you create courses here. And my grandmother can teach me weaving, and that's a course. And so I can stay at home with my grandmother, and she gets paid something, and I learn the weaving, and we continue our cultural practices and lives, and the fishing, and the protection of the land. And we are learning so much from that, and saying, when we look at African communities, young people like Akinyi, rural communities, how do we, refugee communities, how do you empower refugee-led organizations? How do you center yourselves around? So this is what we hope to do. We hope to hold ourselves to account. We may talk more. Let me just finish by saying thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all who've come here. We appreciate it. We can continue talking. I'll finish with just 2 African proverbs that are so simple. One says you learn how to cut a tree by cutting a tree. But that's not a good one for today's world. So I shift it and I say you learn how to plant a tree by planting a tree. So just keep doing, just do. All these things we've talked about, just do what you can, where you can. And the second one, which I use a lot, is hands wash each other. Hands shake each other. We need each other and we have to work together. I want to thank you. I'm so humbled. The foundation thanks you. Everybody here, I'm sure, is giving thanks, and we thank you for your presence. Let's give each other a round of applause as we close. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I want to welcome you to have something to eat. We can start some music, and for those who have the energy, you can be here for longer as you enjoy, and for those that are old like me, we might leave sooner rather than later. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.